Hey guys, tonight we slip into the frozen world of an Inuit whale hunter, somewhere in the Arctic Circle, centuries ago. Picture this. You're curled up in a dome of snow, the air sharp with frost, your breath puffing like little clouds in the dim glow of a seal oil lamp. Outside, the wind hums across endless ice, and somewhere in the distance a whale's spout breaks the silence of the sea. You're about to live a day that's equal parts grueling and sacred, chasing a creature the size of a house with nothing but a wooden boat and your wits. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this without a serious appreciation for central heating. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake just before dawn, though dawn is a loose term in the Arctic, where the sun barely bothers to show up half the year. The igloo's walls glow faintly, catching the first hints of light through the snow. Your bed is a pile of caribou hides, warm but stiff, and every muscle in your body groans from yesterday's paddle. You're not exactly leaping out of bed like it's a Monday morning coffee run. The air smells of salt and smoke, and the cold bites at your fingertips as you fumble for your boots. Your family, wife, kids, maybe an elder or two, stirs nearby, their soft snores blending with the creak of the ice outside. This igloo, built by hand, is a marvel. Layers of snow blocks cut with a bone knife, packed just right to trap heat. Historians still argue whether these structures were permanent homes or seasonal camps, but either way, you're grateful for the shelter. You stretch, joints popping, and glance at the kamatiek, your wooden sled, propped against the wall. It's loaded with harpoons and ropes, ready for the hunt. Your stomach rumbles, but breakfast comes later. First, you need to check the weather. You crawl through the low tunnel, emerging into a world of blinding white. The sky is a watercolor wash of grey and pink, and the sea ice stretches like a cracked mirror to the horizon. You squint, reading the clouds. A storm could ruin the hunt, and you've heard stories of hunters lost to sudden blizzards. A quirky tidbit. Some Inuit hunters believed the aurora borealis was a game of soccer played by ancestral spirits. You smirk, imagining ghosts kicking a walrus skull across the sky. No aurora today, though, just a biting wind that makes your eyes water. You kneel, testing the snow's texture. Too powdery, and the sled won't glide. Too wet, and it'll stick. It's perfect. Crisp enough for a smooth run. You're not alone in this prep. Across the village, other hunters emerge, their silhouettes dark against the snow. Everyone moves with purpose, but there's no rush. Haste gets you killed out here. You exchange nods, maybe a grunt or two. No one's wasting breath on small talk when the temperature's flirting with -20. Your role as a whale hunter isn't just a job, it's a lifeline. A single bowhead whale can feed your village for months, its blubber fueling lamps, its bones shaping tools. One mainstream fact, bowheads were the backbone of Inuit survival, providing up to 50 tons of resources per catch. That's like hitting the Arctic jackpot. Before heading back inside, you pause, scanning the horizon for whale spouts. Nothing yet, but the day's young. You duck back into the igloo where your wife is already stoking the fire. She's not coming on the hunt, her day's filled with skinning hides and tending the kids. But she's as much a part of this as you are. You tease her about her fire-starting skills, joking that she's secretly trying to smoke you out. She rolls her eyes and you both laugh, the sound muffled by the snow walls. It's a small moment, but it grounds you. The hunt's dangerous, and there's no guarantee you'll come back. For now, though, you're just a guy in a snow house, dodging his wife's sarcasm and dreaming of whale meat. You're back inside the igloo, the warmth from the seal oil lamp barely cutting the chill, and it's time to gear up for the hunt. Your clothes aren't exactly a quick grab from the closet. Every piece is a hand-stitched masterpiece designed to keep you alive in a world that's actively trying to freeze you solid. You start with a base layer of caribou hide, the fur turned inward to trap heat against your skin. It's soft but heavy, like wearing a shaggy blanket. Next comes the sealskin parka, waterproof and windproof, with a hood fringed in wolverine fur because, fun fact, wolverine hair doesn't frost up when you breathe. You pull on mittens made from polar bear hide. Sorry, no vegan options out here. And boots of double-layered sealskin stuffed with dried grass for insulation. You look like a walking furball, but you're toasty, and that's what counts. The process takes forever, and you're sweating by the time you're done. Your wife, busy scraping a hide nearby, smirks and says you smell like a wet dog already. You fire back that at least you're a warm, wet dog, and she laughs, tossing you a spare sock made of braided hair fur. It's moments like these that keep you sane. The Arctic's brutal, but a little sass goes a long way. You double-check your parka's seams, one tear in the wrong place, and the cold will claw right through. A mainstream historical fact. Inuit clothing was so effective that early European explorers often ditched their wool coats for sealskin gear, marveling at its warmth. You can't blame them. Your outfit's basically a wearable fortress. There's a quirky tidbit about these clothes too. Some hunters added tiny bone charms to their parkas, believing they'd ward off angry sea spirits. You've got one, a walrus tooth carving of a seal tucked into your sleeve. You don't fully buy the spirit thing, but why tempt fate? Historians still argue whether these charms were purely spiritual or just good luck tokens, like a rabbit's foot for the Arctic set. You're not here to solve that debate, you're just trying not to freeze your toes off. You step outside again, fully dressed, and the cold hits like a slap. The village is waking up now, with smoke curling from other igloos and kids darting between snowdrifts, their laughter sharp in the still air. You trudge to the sled, your boots crunching on the snow, and check your gear one last time. The harpoons, tipped with bone or traded iron, are lashed tight. The ropes woven from seal sinew are coiled neatly. You're not just dressing for warmth, you're armouring up for a day that could end in triumph or disaster. Every stitch in your parka, every knot in your rope is a bet on coming home alive. Your breath fogs in front of you and you catch a glimpse of the sea glinting under the rising light. The whales are out there somewhere, and you're one step closer to finding them. You pause, adjusting your mittens, and notice a neighbour struggling with his own parka. You call out, joking that he's dressed like a walrus caught in a net, and he grumbles back, but there's a grin in his voice. It's a small village, and everyone's got each other's backs, especially when you're all betting your lives on the same hunt. You sling a small bag over your shoulder, packed with dried fish for later, and take a deep breath. The air tastes like salt and ice, and it's time to move. You're standing by the fire now, the igloo's warmth a faint shield against the Arctic's bite, and it's time for breakfast. The flames flicker from a kudlik, a crescent-shaped stone lamp filled with seal blubber, its moss wick spitting soft light across the snow walls. Your wife tends the fire, nudging the wick to keep it steady, and the air smells of melting fat and smoke. You sit cross-legged on a caribou hide, your stomach growling like an impatient dog. Breakfast isn't exactly a stack of pancakes with maple syrup. Out here, it's raw seal meat, sliced thin, and a chunk of frozen fish, both laid out on a flat stone. You grab a piece of seal, its texture chewy and rich, the fat melting on your tongue like butter. It's not gourmet, but it's fuel, and you'll need every calorie for the hunt. You chew slowly, savouring the saltiness, and your wife slides you a small bowl of fermented walrus flipper. Yep, that's a thing. It's tangy, almost sour, and you grimace, joking that it tastes like the sea got mad and pickled itself. She chuckles, saying you'll thank her when you're not starving by noon. A mainstream historical fact, seal blubber was a dietary staple for the Inuit, packed with vitamins C and D, which kept scurvy at bay long before Europeans figured out citrus. You're not thinking about vitamins, though. You're just glad to be eating something warmish. The kids huddled nearby nibble on dried berries, their faces smudged with soot from leaning too close to the kudlik. There's a quirky tidbit about this meal. Some Inuit believed eating raw meat kept you hot inside, like a living furnace against the cold. You're not sure if it's true, but your core feels like a coal ember, so maybe they're onto something. Historians still argue whether this raw diet was purely practical or tied to spiritual beliefs about respecting the animal's soul. You don't care much for the debate, you're too busy scraping the last bit of walrus from the bowl. The fire pops, sending a spark onto your parka, and you brush it off, muttering about the lamp's bad manners. Your wife snorts and you both laugh, the sound swallowed by the igloo's thick walls. You finish eating and lean back, wiping your hands on your sealskin pants. The kudlik's glow paints the room in gold, and for a moment, you're just a guy with a full stomach, not a hunter about to chase a whale the size of a bus. Outside, the wind hums and you hear the faint crunch of boots, other hunters getting ready. You glance at your sled, propped in the corner, its harpoons gleaming in the firelight. Breakfast is over, and the day's real work is about to start. You stand, stretching, and your youngest kid tugs at your mitten, asking if you'll bring back a whale big enough to feed the whole village. You ruffle their hair, promising to try, but your mind's already on the sea. The cold waits outside, and you're not eager to meet it again, but there's no delaying now. You thank your wife for the meal, joking that she's the real hero for cooking with flippers. She waves you off, but there's a flicker of worry in her eyes. She knows the hunt's dangers as well as you do. You grab a bone knife from the floor, tucking it into your belt, and take one last look at the fire. The kudlik's flame dances, a tiny sun in a world of ice, and you carry its warmth in your chest as you crawl through the tunnel to face the day. You're outside now, the Arctic air nipping at your face, and it's time to prep the Umiak, the boat that'll carry you to the whales. The Umiak sits on the snowy shore, its frame of driftwood and whalebone lashed together with seal sinew, covered in taut walrus hides. It's not a sleek yacht, think a clunky, oversized canoe about 30 feet long, built to haul a dozen hunters and a dead whale. You circle it, running your mittened hands along the seams, checking for cracks or loose stitches. One bad seam and the icy sea will pour in, turning your hunt into a popsicle party. You tug at a knot, satisfied it'll hold, and mutter a thanks to whoever sewed this beast together, probably your wife and her crew, who spent weeks chewing hides to soften them. Yeah, chewing. That's how they made leather pliable before needles took over. You grab a paddle, its blade carved from a single piece of spruce, and test its weight. It's solid, familiar, like an extension of your arm. A mainstream historical fact. Umiaks were the Inuits' go-to for whaling, versatile enough to navigate ice-choked waters and carry massive cargo. Without them, your village would starve. You notice a nick in the paddle's edge and smooth it with your bone knife, cursing under your breath when it snags. You joke to yourself that the paddle's pickier than your kid refusing fermented flipper, and the thought makes you grin despite the cold. There's a quirky tidbit here. Some Umiak builders added a tiny carving, a seal or a bird, under the hull, believing it gave the boat a soul to guide it home. You flip up a corner of the hide covering and spot one, a crude walrus etched into the wood. You don't know if it's magic, but you're not about to scrape it off. Historians still argue whether these carvings were spiritual or just decorative, like a hood ornament for the Arctic. You're not betting your life on a debate, so you pat the walrus and move on. Other hunters join you, their breath fogging in the dawn light. One guy, your cousin, points out a loose lashing, and you both kneel to retie it, fingers clumsy in mittens. He teases that your knots look like a polar bear tied them, and you retort that his face scares the whales away. The banter's light, but you're all focused, double-checking harpoons and ropes. The Umiak's heavy, so you drag it toward the water's edge, the snow crunching under its frame. The sea laps at the ice, dark and restless, and you scan for whale spouts. Nothing yet, but the day's just starting. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow. Yeah, you're sweating in -20, thanks to the sealskin sauna you're wearing. The village hums behind you, women stitching hides, kids hauling sleds, elders muttering weather predictions. Everyone's got a role, and yours is this boat. You give the Umiak a final once-over, then signal the others. It's ready. You push it into the shallows, the ice scraping its hull, and climb aboard, settling onto a bench of lashed bone. The cold seeps through your boots, but you're too busy gripping the paddle to care. The sea's calling, and you're about to answer. You're at the edge of the village now, the Umiak bobbing in the shallow, icy water, and it's time to say goodbye before the hunt. The shore is alive with movement. Families gather, their faces bundled in fur hoods, eyes squinting against the glare of snow. Your wife stands with your kids, her parka dusted with frost, holding your youngest's mittened hand. You catch her gaze, and there's a silent understanding. This hunt feeds the village, but it's no guarantee you'll come back. You kneel, ruffling your kid's hair through their hood, promising a whale big enough to make the elders sing. They giggle, but your wife's lips tighten. She's heard too many stories of hunters lost to the sea. You stand, giving her a quick nod, and she hands you a small sealskin pouch of dried fish, muttering to eat it before you freeze. You tease that her cooking's the real danger, and she swats your arm, the brief laugh cutting the tension. The other hunters are doing the same. Quiet words, quick embraces. One guy, your cousin, hugs his mother, who's muttering prayers to the sea spirits. A mainstream historical fact. Inuit whaling was a community effort, with entire villages relying on a single hunt for survival, from food to lamp oil. Everyone's invested, and the weight of that sits heavy as you glance at the crowd. A quirky tidbit. Some families tied a braided sinew cord around a hunter's wrist, believing it tethered them to home. Your wife didn't bother. You both know you're too stubborn to get lost, but you feel the villagers' hope like a cord anyway. Historians still argue whether these farewells were formal rituals or just practical send-offs. But you're not here for ceremony. You climb into the umiak, settling beside your cousin, who's already gripping his paddle like it owes him money. You joke that he's scaring the whales with that scowl, and he grumbles back, but the mood's tight. The elders chant softly, their voices carrying over the water, asking the sea for a safe return. Kids wave, their mittens flapping, and you wave back, your paddle raised like a flag. The village shrinks as you push off, the umiak gliding over the ice-strewn sea, and you turn forward, the cold stinging your face. The shore fades, but you carry the memory of your wife's face, the kids' laughter, the elders' song. It's fuel, like the seal blubber from breakfast. Remember that tangy walrus flipper? You grip your paddle, the walrus carving under the hull flashing in your mind. That little soul better do its job. The other hunters are quiet now, their breaths puffing in rhythm. You scan the horizon, the sea a slate of grey and white, and feel the village's trust pressing on you. No one says it, but failure isn't an option, not when every igloo needs that whale. You lean into the paddle, the umiak cutting through the waves, and brace for what's ahead. You're in the umiak now, paddling through the Arctic Sea, the village a faint smudge behind you. The water's a mosaic of ice floes and dark waves, each stroke of your paddle sending a shiver through the walrus-hide hull. You're one of 12 hunters, shoulders hunched, moving in sync like a single breathing beast. The cold gnaws at your face, but your sealskin parka, remember that Wolverine-fringed hood, keeps the worst at bay. You're heading for open water, where bowhead whales migrate, their spouts a distant promise. The umiak glides, dodging ice chunks that could tear its seams, and you keep your eyes peeled for a telltale mist against the grey sky. You're not just rowing, you're hunting already, every sense tuned to the sea. A mainstream historical fact, bowhead whales were the Inuits' primary target, their thick blubber and baleen sustaining entire communities for months. One whale could mean the difference between a warm winter and starvation. You spot a spout, maybe a mile off, and your heart kicks up a notch. You point, grunting to your cousin beside you, and the crew shifts, paddles digging deeper. A quirky tidbit. Some hunters swore they could hear a whale's song through the hull, a low hum felt in their bones. You press your hand to the umiak's frame, half expecting to feel it, but there's only the creak of wood and the slap of waves. You chuckle, joking to yourself that maybe the walrus carving under the hull's hogging all the whale vibes. Historians still argue whether Inuit hunters tracked whales by sound or just sharp eyesight, but you're betting on your eyes today. The spout's closer now, a geyser of mist, and you steer toward it, weaving through ice like a thread through a needle. Your cousin mutters about the whale being a lazy one, and you retort that it's probably just waiting for his ugly mug to show up. The crew snickers, the tension easing for a moment. You're all tired already. Paddling's no joke in this cold, but the whale's your focus. Its promise pulling you forward like that sinew cord from the village farewell. Remember your wife's worried glance. The sea's alive around you, seals popping up like curious neighbours, their eyes glinting before they dive. You read the water's surface, the ripples and currents hinting at what lies below. The wind carries salt and frost, stinging your cheeks, and you adjust your grip, the paddle's spruce handle worn smooth by years of hunts. You're not thinking about the village now, or the fermented flipper breakfast, just the whale, the boat, the men beside you. Another spout, closer, and the crew goes quiet, paddles slowing to a stealthy rhythm. You're in the game now. The Arctic, your board, the whale, your prize. You lean forward, ready for the next move. You're deep in the Arctic Sea now, the umiak slicing through waves dotted with ice, your eyes locked on the horizon where a whale's spout just vanished. The air's thick with salt and anticipation, and you're not just paddling anymore, you're reading the ocean like a book. Every ripple, every shift in the current tells you something about the bowhead whale you're chasing. You notice a slick patch on the water, oily and smooth, a sign the whale's been feeding nearby. You point it out and the crew nods, paddles dipping quieter now. You're close, maybe a few hundred yards, and the hunt's about to get real. Your sealskin parka's damp with spray. Remember that wolverine fur that doesn't frost up? But you're too focused to care about the cold creeping into your boots. A mainstream historical fact. Inuit hunters relied on environmental cues like slicks and spouts to track whales. A skill honed over generations that let them outsmart creatures 10 times show their boat's size. You squint, spotting a faint swirl in the waves like the ghost of a whirlpool. That's a fluke print, left by the whale's tail as it dives. You signal the crew to angle left following the trail. A quirky tidbit. Some hunters believed whales could sense fear, so they'd hum low tunes to stay calm, thinking it kept the whale from bolting. You're not humming, your cousin's off-key singing last hunt was bad enough, but you keep your breathing steady, picturing that walrus carving under the hull, remember its soul, guiding you. Historians still argue whether Inuit tracking was pure science or mixed with spiritual intuition, but you don't care about theories, you're living it. The whale surfaces again, its black back gleaming, and you gauge its size, maybe 50 feet, a giant that could feed the village for months. You read the waves again, noting how the ice flows shift and adjust the Umiak's path to avoid a collision. Your cousin mutters that the whale's teasing you, and you joke back that it's just picky about who harpoons it. The crew chuckles, but it's a tight sound. Everyone's on edge, paddles poised, waiting for the moment to strike. You lean forward, scanning for the next spout, your hands aching from the paddle's grip. The sea's a living thing around you. Seals diving, gulls circling, all part of the same dance. You think of the village, your wife's quick nod at the farewell, remember her sealskin pouch, and it steadies you. The whale dives again, its fluke slapping the water, and you mark the spot in your mind. You're not just chasing a whale, you're chasing survival, and every sign you read brings you closer. The Umiak glides, the crew silent, and you brace for what's next, the ocean whispering its secrets in every wave. You're in the thick of it now, the Umiak rocking gently as the bowhead whale surfaces just 100 yards ahead, its massive back a black island in the grey sea. Your heart's pounding, but you keep your grip steady on the paddle, eyes locked on the beast. It's time for the harpoon strike, the make-or-break moment of the hunt. You shift to the bow, where the lead harpooner, a grizzled guy with a scar across his cheek, readies the weapon, a bone-tipped spear tethered to a sealskin float. You're his backup, tasked with tossing a second harpoon if he misses. The crew slows the paddles, the Umiak gliding silently, closing the gap. The whale's spout sprays mist, and you taste salt on your lips, your parka. Remember that wolverine-fringed hood, soaked from the sea's spray. A mainstream historical fact, Inuit harpoons were engineering marvels, with detachable tips that lodged in the whale's blubber, tied to floats that tired the beast out over hours. You watch the harpooner crouch, his movements precise, like a dancer in sealskin. The whale dives, and you hold your breath, counting seconds until it surfaces again. Closer now. A quirky tidbit. Some hunters whispered to their harpoons, believing it woke the weapon's spirit for a true strike. You're not chatting with your spear, it's propped beside you ready, but you give it a pat, half joking to yourself that it better not sleep on the job. Your cousin, still paddling, snickers and says your aim's worse than a blind seal's. You retort that at least you don't paddle like a drunk walrus, and the crew stifles laughs, keeping quiet. Historians still argue whether harpooning was a solo act or a team effort, but you know it's both. Every man in this boat's a cog in the machine. The whale's back breaks the water, and the harpooner lunges, hurling the spear. It arcs, then sinks into the whale's flank, the float bobbles, trailing behind. The beast thrashes, spraying foam, and you grab your harpoon, tossing it hard. It hits another line taut in the water. The whale dives, dragging the floats, and the Umiak lurches as the ropes snap tight. You brace against the bench, your boots slipping on the wet hull. The sea churns, ice flows knocking the boat, and you shout to the crew to hold steady. You're tied to a monster now, and it's not happy. The whale's strength pulls the Umiak, and you think of the village, your wife's worried glance at the farewell. Remember that pouch of dried fish? You dig in, muscles burning, as the harpooner checks the ropes. The whale surfaces, slower now, and you see blood in the water. Not much, but enough. You're not celebrating yet. This is just the start of a long fight. You adjust your mittens, the cold biting through, and ready yourself for the next move, the sea alive with the whale's fury. You're clinging to the umiak, the boat jerking as the bowhead whale, now harpooned, drags you through the Arctic Sea. The ropes, remember those sinew lines you checked back at the village, are taut, vibrating like guitar strings, tethered to the sealskin floats bobbing in the whale's wake. The beast is a force of nature, 50 feet of muscle and blubber, and it's fighting for its life. You're fighting for yours too, and the village's. Your job now is to wear it down, a grueling tug of war across the icy waves. Your arms ache from bracing against the bench, your parka soaked through despite that waterproof sealskin. Remember the wolverine fur? The sea sprays your face, stinging your eyes, and ice floes bump the hull, each hit a reminder of how thin the line is between victory and capsizing. A mainstream historical fact: Inuit whalers could battle a whale for hours, even days, using multiple harpoons and floats to exhaust it before the kill. The whale dives again, pulling the umiak into a spin, and you shout to your cousin to steady his paddle. He's sweating despite the cold, and you joke that he's working harder than the whale, mostly to keep your own nerves in check. A quirky tidbit: some hunters believe the whale's spirit could choose to surrender, sparing itself if the hunters proved worthy. You're not sure about that, but you mutter a quick thanks to the sea, just in case. The walrus carving under the hull, remember its soul, feels like a distant ally now. Historians still argue whether these beliefs shaped hunting tactics or were just morale boosters, but out here, you'll take any edge. The whale surfaces, its spout weaker now, and you see the floats dragging behind, slowing it down. You grab a spare rope, helping the harpooner secure it to the boat. The crew's quiet, focused, every man knowing a wrong move could snap a line or flip the umiak. Your hands burn from the rope's friction even through your mittens, and you think of the village, your wife's quick nod at the farewell, remember her sealskin pouch? That memory keeps you grounded as the whale thrashes, its tail slapping the water, sending a wave that rocks the boat. You curse, half laughing, and tell your cousin the whale's got better aim than he does. He grumbles, but the crew's tension eases for a second. You're not just wrestling a whale, you're wrestling the sea itself. The current's against you, and ice chunks threaten to wedge the umiak. You lean into the fight, muscles screaming, and watch the whale's movements. It's tiring, its dive's shorter, but it's still got fight left. You adjust your grip, the paddle now a brace against the boat's side, and scan the horizon. The sky's darkening, a storm maybe, and you know time's not on your side. You're all in now, tied to this giant, and there's no turning back until it's done. You're still in the umiak, the Arctic Sea churning around you as you tow the wounded bowhead whale toward shore. The beast is slowing, its dives shallower. The sealskin floats, remember those tethered to your harpoons, dragging like anchors in its blubber. Your arms are lead, your parka drenched from waves, crashing over the bow. That sealskin's not as waterproof as you hoped, despite the wolverine fringe. The whale's strength is fading, but it's still a giant, and the current's fighting you as hard as the beast itself. You're paddling now, not to chase but to haul, the umiak groaning under the strain of the ropes. The shore's a faint line of white, miles off, and every stroke feels like dragging a mountain through the water. A mainstream historical fact: Inuit hunters often towed whales for hours to reach land, a feat of endurance that turned a kill into a village-wide lifeline. You glance at your cousin, his face grim as he paddles, and mutter that the whale's heavier than his ego. He snorts, saying you're just jealous of his charm, and the crew's tired chuckles break the silence. A quirky tidbit: some hunters believed the sea itself helped a worthy crew, easing currents for a safe return. You're not counting on oceanic charity, but you notice the ice floes parting just enough to let the umiak pass, and you nod at the walrus carving under the hull. Remember its soul, half wondering if it's pulling strings. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were practical superstitions or spiritual anchors, but you're too busy paddling to care. The whale surfaces, its spout a weak puff, and you see blood trailing in the water, less than before, but a sign it's nearing the end. You adjust the ropes, your mittens chafed raw, and brace against the bench as a wave rocks the boat. The sky's turning ugly, clouds piling up like bruised cotton, and you know a storm could trap you out here. You think of the village, your wife's worried glance at the farewell, remember that pouch of dried fish, and it pushes you to dig deeper, paddle harder. The crew's in sync, grunting with each stroke, the Umiak inching toward shore. Seals pop up nearby, their eyes curious, and you joke to yourself that they're scouting for leftovers. The tow is brutal, the sea relentless, but you're gaining ground. The whale's weight pulls the boat sideways, and you shout to the harpooner to check the lines. He nods, his scarred face set, and you feel the weight of the village's trust. Every igloo needs this whale. You're not just hauling meat, you're hauling survival. The shore's closer now, a smudge of snow and rock, and you can almost taste the fire waiting there. You paddle on, the cold biting your face, the whale's bulk a promise and a burden. You're finally nearing the shore, the Umiak's hull scraping against thin ice as the village comes into view, a cluster of igloos glowing faintly under the dim Arctic sky. The bowhead whale, now lifeless, floats behind you, its massive bulk tethered to the boat by those sinew ropes. Remember checking their knots back at the village? Your arms are numb from hours of paddling and towing, your parka stiff with frozen spray despite that wolverine-fringed hood. The crew's exhausted, faces etched with salt and strain, but there's a quiet pride in the air. You've done it. Now it's time to divide the catch, a task as sacred as the hunt itself. You beach the Umiak, boots crunching on the snowy shore, and the village swarms to meet you, their cheers muffled by the wind. A mainstream historical fact, Inuit communities practice maktak sharing, dividing a whale's meat, blubber and bones among all families to ensure no one went hungry. You help drag the whale onto the ice, its black hide gleaming, and elders direct the process, their voices sharp despite their age. Your wife's there, her eyes bright with relief, and she hands you a bone knife, teasing that you look like a drowned seal. You grin, saying she's just jealous of your sea-soaked charm, and the crowd laughs, easing the day's tension. A quirky tidbit. Some villagers mark the first cut with a chant, believing it honored the whale's spirit for giving itself. You don't sing, your voice is worse than your cousin's paddle skills, but you bow your head as an elder hums, the knife slicing into blubber. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual or practical for community bonding, but you feel the unity either way. You carve thick slabs of maktak, the fatty skin layered with blubber, and pass them to waiting hands. Kids dart around, hauling smaller chunks, while women stack meat on sleds. Your cousin, still catching his breath, takes a slice and chews it raw, grinning like he's won a prize. You try a piece, its rich, oily taste grounding you after the sea's chaos. You think of the farewell, remember your wife's worried nod? And her presence now feels like a tether. Every family gets a share, meat for eating, blubber for lamps, baleen for tools. Nothing's wasted. You work fast, the cold preserves the whale, but a storm's brewing, and you want this done before snow buries the shore. The village hums with purpose, knives flashing, sleds creaking. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow, and watch the scene. A living machine fueled by one whale. Your hands ache, but you keep cutting, knowing this haul will light igloos and fill bellies for months. The sea's still out there, restless, but for now, you're home, surrounded by people who bet their lives on you and won. You're back in the village, the whale's carcass now a mountain of divided meat and blubber on the snowy shore, and your hands are still sticky from carving maktak. The air buzzes with the village's energy, kids hauling sleds, women sorting baleen, but you're focused on the next task, crafting tools from the whale's bones. You trudge to a cleared patch near the igloos, where the elders have set up a workspace, bone fragments scattered like a prehistoric puzzle. Your parka's stiff with dried seawater, remember that wolverine fringe? But the cold's no match for the heat of purpose. You grab a whalebone rib, its curves smooth and heavy, and settle onto a hide mat, bone knife in hand. This isn't just busy work. Every piece you shape becomes a tool to keep the village alive. A mainstream historical fact. Inuit artisans used whalebone for everything from harpoon tips to sled runners, its strength and flexibility rivaling wood in a land with no trees. You start carving, shaving the bone into a harpoon shaft, your strokes slow to avoid cracks. Your cousin, nearby, works on a baleen strip, muttering about making a fishing net. You tease that his nets catch more seaweed than fish, and he flicks a bone chip at you, grinning. The banter's light, but your hands stay steady, the knife scrape a rhythmic hum. A quirky tidbit. Some carvers etch tiny seals or birds into their tools, believing it gave them luck for future hunts. You add a small wave pattern to your shaft, not for luck, but because it feels right, like that walrus carving under the Umiak's hull. Remember its soul. Historians still argue whether these etchings were decorative or held spiritual weight, but you're just glad the bone's cooperating. The rib takes shape, its tip sharp enough for a spear, and you test its balance, pleased. Around you, others carve needles, combs, even toy sleds for kids. The whale's skeleton, a gift that keeps giving. Your wife stops by, dropping off a chunk of raw mactac to chew, and you thank her, thinking of her worried glance at the farewell. Remember that sealskin pouch? You offer her a bite, joking that it's better than her fermented flipper, and she rolls her eyes, stealing half anyway. The sky is darkening, storm clouds looming, but the village works on, the bone pile shrinking as tools take form. You finish the harpoon shaft, setting it aside, and start on a smaller piece for a fishhook. The whale's not just food, it's your future, carved into every tool you hold. You pause, hands aching, and watch the kids play nearby, their laughter a reminder of why you do this. The sea's quiet now, but its gifts are loud in your hands. You're gathered in the heart of the village now, the day's work fading as the Arctic sky darkens to a bruised purple. The whale's been divided, its bones carved into tools. Remember that harpoon shaft you shaped? And it's time for the evening feast. You sit cross-legged on a caribou hide outside a large igloo, the air thick with the smell of raw whale meat and burning blubber. The village is alive. Families cluster around stone hearths, their faces glowing in the flicker of Kudlik lamps, those seal oil burners you warmed by at breakfast. Remember the tangy walrus flipper? You're handed a slab of mactac, the whale's fatty skin and blubber, sliced thin. It's chewy, rich, almost sweet, and you savour it, your stomach grateful after the hunt's grind. Your parka's finally drying, though the wolverine fringe still smells like the sea. A mainstream historical fact. Inuit feasts after a whale hunt were communal, reinforcing bonds and ensuring everyone ate, from elders to kids. Your wife sits beside you, passing a bowl of raw whale liver, its texture soft and metallic. You grimace, joking that it's her revenge for your flipper jab earlier, and she smirks, saying you'll eat worse if the hunt fails. The crowd chuckles, and your cousin across the hearth toasts you with a strip of blubber, his face smudged with soot. A quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed eating mactac together shared the whale's strength, making the community tougher. You're not sure about that, but you feel stronger already, the food warming you from the inside. Historians still argue whether these feasts were purely social or had ritual weight, but you're too busy chewing to care. You take another bite, the mactac's fat melting on your tongue, and glance at the kids nearby, gnawing on baleen strips like candy. The elders tell stories, their voices low, about past hunts and sea spirits. You think of the village farewell, remember your wife's worried nod, and her presence now, sharing this meal, grounds you. The feast isn't fancy, no plates, no forks, just hands and knives, but it's a triumph. You lean back, the fire's heat battling the cold, and joke to your cousin that his appetite's scarier than the whale. He laughs, tossing you a fish chunk, and the night feels lighter, the village knit tighter by every bite. The storm clouds hold off, and you eat until your stomach's full, the whale's gift sinking deep. The sea's distant now, its dangers a memory, but its bounty's right here in every face around the fire. You wipe your hands on your sealskin pants, ready for the stories to come. You're settled inside a large igloo now, the feast's warmth lingering in your belly as the village gathers for storytelling under the flickering glow of a Kudlik lamp. The air smells of seal oil and packed snow, and you're cross-legged on a caribou hide, your parka finally shed, though that wolverine-fringed hood still smells faintly of the sea. The whale hunt's done, its meat shared, its bones carved. Remember that harpoon shaft? And now it's time to pass the day's triumph into stories. Elders, hunters, and kids crowd the space, their faces shadowed by the lamp's dance. You lean back, the snow walls muffling the wind outside, and listen as your cousin starts, his voice low, recounting the whale's first spout. Your wife, beside you, nudges you with a smirk, whispering that he's exaggerating already. You grin, muttering that his stories are bigger than the whale itself. A mainstream historical fact, Inuit oral traditions preserved hunting knowledge and community history, passed down through stories that blended fact with myth. Your cousin gestures wildly, describing the harpoon strike. Remember that tense moment? And the kids gasp, wide-eyed. A quirky tidbit. Some storytellers claimed whales could listen to these tales, deciding which villages deserved future hunts. You don't buy it, but you glance at the igloo's entrance, half expecting a whale to poke its head in. You joke to yourself that it'd probably complain about your cousin's loud voice, and you stifle a laugh. Historians still argue whether these stories were meant to teach, entertain, or honor the animals, but you feel all three happening now. An elder takes over, her voice a soft rasp, weaving a tale of a hunter saved by a seal spirit. You add your bit, describing the sea's churn when the whale dragged the umiak, your hands mimicking the waves. The crowd murmurs, and your wife teases that you're no bard, but her eyes are proud. You think of the village farewell, remember her worried nod, and her warmth now anchors you. The lamp's flame sways, painting the walls with shadows, and you feel the day's weight. Paddle, harpoon, tow, melt into the story's rhythm. Another hunter chimes in, and you pass around dried fish from that sealskin pouch. Remember her handing it to you? The snack tying you to the sea's gifts. The night deepens, the stories flowing like a river, each one knitting the village tighter. You're not just a hunter now, you're a thread in a tapestry, the whale's life woven into yours. The kudlik sputters, and you lean into the moment, the Arctic's cold held at bay by words and light. You're still in the igloo, the storytelling winding down, the kudlik lamp's flame now a faint flicker casting long shadows across the snow walls. The village is quiet, the air heavy with the day's triumphs. Whale hunted, meat shared, bones carved, remember that harpoon shaft, stories told. You're slumped on a caribou hide, your wife leaning against you, her breath slow and steady. Your sealskin pants are stiff from the day's work, but you're too tired to care. The wolverine-fringed parka draped nearby like a shed skin. It's late, the Arctic night a deep, endless black outside, and you're ready to drift to sleep, lulled by the soft creak of the igloo and the distant hum of wind over the ice. The hunt feels like a dream already, its weight easing with every slow breath. A mainstream historical fact: Inuit sleep patterns often followed the Arctic's extreme cycles, with long rests during dark winters to conserve energy after hunts. You yawn, your body heavy, and your cousin, sprawled nearby, mumbles that you snore louder than a walrus. You mutter back that his stories put the whales to sleep first, and your wife chuckles, her warmth a tether to the moment. A quirky tidbit. Some Inuit believed sleeping near a whalebone tool brought dreams of the sea, guiding future hunts. You glance at the bone knife by your side, half hoping for a dreamless rest instead, and pat it like that walrus carving under the umiak. Remember its soul? Historians still argue whether these beliefs shaped sleep rituals or were just poetic folklore, but you're too drowsy to ponder it. You think of the village farewell, remember your wife's worried nod, and her presence now curled. The feast, the stories, all of it weaves into a haze as you settle deeper into the hides. The kids are asleep nearby, their soft snores blending with the igloo's quiet. You pull a hide over you, the weight familiar, and let your eyes close, the lamp's last glow fading. The sea's out there, vast and restless, but here you're held by snow and family, the whale's gift, a promise kept. And now, let's slow things down, let the world soften around you. The igloo's walls seem to breathe, their snow cradling you like a whisper. The wind outside hums a lullaby, low and steady, carrying the sea's secrets far beyond the horizon. You feel your wife's hand, warm against yours, and the village's rhythm, hunt, feast, story, rest, settles into your bones. The whale's life, your life, the ice and stars, all blur into one long, gentle note. Picture the snow falling, each flake a tiny story, drifting, fading, gone. Your breath slows, the cold a distant friend, and the Arctic night wraps you in its quiet arms. Sleep comes like a tide, soft, inevitable, pulling you under. Let it carry you, let it hold you, until the world is just a sigh, and you're gone, dreaming of waves and warmth. Sweet dreams.